I got targeted, the algorithm got me really bad the other day. I was scrolling, just minding my own business, and bam, I got hit with this gorgeously shot greenwashed ad from the BC NDP about their new approach to forestry. And in case you were all wondering what blatant greenwashing looks like, check this out. Yeah, clean animations, crisp text, and I bet a marketing firm got paid top dollar for that. Lack of punctuation, lowercase type font there, makes it seem all casual. And then, of course, people walking through the woods together, cute bit of stock footage right there. So aside from the fact that the BC government is using your tax dollars for ad spend on social media to greenwash you into believing that their recent deferral initiatives are actually making changes, especially when that ad spend money goes to a company like Meta that ultimately seeks to disconnect us from ourselves, our communities, and the physical world entirely, there are a couple huge issues with this messaging here, so let's talk about it. So the first message is that they are improving how they care for our forests, which as a blanket statement is total bullcuss. They aren't actually changing or improving any method of care for forests across BC at all. There is no talk about reducing clear-cut size or changing methods of harvest to better suit the geographic and ecological roles of each forest plot. There is no money going towards helping mills retrofit their hardware to adapt to smaller log harvests, and absolutely no talk or discussion of any kind towards putting energy into the restoration and rehabilitation of these forest ecosystems that have been devastated by centuries of logging that are some of the biggest causes of things like catastrophic wildfires, floods, landslides that take out infrastructure. No big deal, right? At best, the current deferral proposals simply change who can do what, where in our forests, but as far as actually caring for them better, this statement is just straight up a lie. The next message, better care for old growth. Again, total bullcuss. There is nothing happening with these deferrals that actually suggests better care for these old growth forests. The methods aren't changing. There are no regulations that would encourage more honorable harvest methods or eco-forestry practices that would leave the biggest and grandest trees standing while taking no more from the ecosystem than it can generate in a given harvest period. It's still simply whoever has the license to log can clear cut everything to the ground with no regard to the lasting ecological and social impacts those actions have. I think what they might be trying to refer to here is that they have, proposed deferring 2.6 million hectares of old-growth forest, at-risk old-growth forest here in BC. But what they're also conveniently leaving out is that since that deferral announcement, about 50,000 hectares of those same at-risk forests have been logged or approved for logging, with about 2,000 of those hectares getting approved since they made that announcement just over a month ago. So publicly facing, they say one thing, that they're caring about old-growth forests, while behind their backs, they're still actively logging in areas they plan to protect, with no talk about changing harvest methods in a way that would actually care for these old-growth forests. Then the third message here, meaningful partnerships with Indigenous peoples. This one's heavy because you see, while they have been actively logging or approving logging plans on at-risk old-growth forests that they plan to protect, they have been waiting for confirmation from Indigenous nations on whose land those old-growth forests reside regarding whether or not they want to save them, but they didn't have to consult them at all to log them in the first place. So after 18 months of trying to figure out what to do, the BC government only gave these nations a mere 30 days to make a very difficult decision while still allowing old-growth logging to occur. When companies log these lands, they often do so with whatever methods are the most profitable to them, and then these nations then get a small portion of those profits as basically a payout for not speaking out against the methods used. Yet that payout is still more than the government has offered if they agree to a temporary 2-year deferral, which has huge impacts on these communities. Grand Chief Sďwrt, the president of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, spoke out about the situation saying, quote, "The Horgan government is abdicating its responsibility to protect old growth, is pressuring First Nations into making critical decisions regarding the territories and forests they have stewarded over since time immemorial, and is continuing to deny the fact that they must immediately provide substantial resources to support First Nations towards this goal. This is consent by coercion," end quote. He then added that Premier John Horgan needs to, quote, "immediately defer logging in at-risk old growth while resourcing communities to pursue permanent protection," end quote, which sums this all up incredibly well. Not only is this coercion simply a colonist guise to maintain power without forming any sort of real meaningful partnership with Indigenous peoples that the BC NDP claims to have, but it overlooks many communities throughout BC. Though these nations aren't able to make a free and clear decision on the matter, the government has allocated a small amount of funds to potentially help these communities transition to forest protection at a later date, maybe, yet they have not promised anything and have done very little to support communities or those in the forest industry that would be affected by these decisions. It's a precarious position to be in, I get it, but this transition to a better future only works if everyone is supported throughout it. Our forests, our future. Now, this statement here is the only one that actually speaks any real truth. They're not wrong. They are our forests and it is our future. Yet the BC NDP continually makes moves that doesn't benefit the collective whole and instead only makes minor cosmetic changes to the industry that only seeks to keep those in positions of power in control. They claim that there is no more money to help Indigenous communities during this transition or to support forestry workers and small businesses, yet they can spend millions on RCMP enforcement of an injunction to observe the operations of a single private logging company company, or hire fancy marketing firms to pay for ads like this one here in an effort to secure your vote and boost themselves in the polls without actually having to do any of the hard work or have the difficult conversations. The BC NDP sure likes to spend a lot of time complaining about how difficult it is to make this change that they committed to, going through extreme lengths to justify their inaction. But can you imagine if they put that same amount of time and energy and resources into actually just making the change happen, and just actually supporting these communities and actually caring about the collective whole? I've said it many times before, and I will say it again. I am not, nor is this entire social movement to protect old growth, anti-logging in any way. Logging built this society, these towns, these cities. I have a family history in logging and know that we will always need forest products. We just need to do it better. We need to do it in a way that doesn't neglect or disregard the rights of Indigenous peoples, that actually acknowledges and honors their connection and care for these lands, and allows them to make their own decisions without fiscal or economic punishment. We need to do it in a way that creates lasting jobs and economy for skilled workers and fallers, so that we can actually care for these forests with those who know how to work in them better than anyone else. We need to do it in a way that preserves ecological integrity and biodiversity for future generations, for our children, to help store and sequester carbon while mitigating the increasingly severe effects of climate change. We need to stop logging these remaining old growth forests for profits and instead retrofit our industry to rehabilitate and restore the 49 million hectares of second growth forests in the province to create lasting ecological function, economic stability, and strong, vibrant communities. These are our forests, and we all need to take care of them for our future, yet we will never see any change in the status quo until the government changes its ways and starts to actually listen and care for the people it's supposed to represent. So let's hold them accountable for creating a better world in the future, a future that benefits us all.